So I looked at your note and you said you had level 2 lesson 34. This is actually level 2 lesson 36, I believe. I taught it earlier this week, but it's still in my portal, so we can still access it. So I'm just going to kind of go through slide by slide with some very generic, sorry, timer, some generic tips and tricks to just kind of how I approach the lesson and just to give you some feedback. So, intro slide. I will give you one tip. Intro slide. This slide is always repeated every lesson. So the intro slide and the summary slide are always exactly the same. They're identical. For that reason, I typically do not do it on as a summary. I go through it as the intro, and I ignore that summary slide in terms of my slide count, unless I am really grasping for straws and I need to extend and I need that time. A general rule of thumb, classes are 30 minutes. You can go to the end, the page where you give out stickers. You can go there at the 28-minute mark. So I try to shoot for between 2 to 3 minutes per slide. So that usually helps me with my pacing and making sure I get there. There's some slides you're gonna blow through it in 30 seconds. It is what it is. But I try to make sure I extend on every slide and never return back to if I have extra time. Anytime I've done that, it's been like something that's a simple game like bingo or something like that where it would make sense to go back. Excuse me. But I really strive to never return to slides. That's the way I teach. So, okay, intro slide. I typically just try to find some very simple extensions. Who do you see? Um, where are they? What's in the classroom? What color is it? Based on the level. Um, I teach mainly like level ones through threes. Occasionally, I get level four and fives. But even like level one, I try to do the extensions and just base it on the child's level. If you're an experienced ESL teacher, you have an idea of how to move far from there. So I typically will try to do extensions. You'll see here that there's little boxes here where you could put the kids on stage. I don't do that on this slide because it's an intro. I'll do it later on in the lesson when we're playing some games or doing some review, but I don't ever do it this early. Oh, I will say I do it on the um, actual intro page. I put the kids on stage. I'll mute the other ones. I'll introduce myself to them, ask them what's their name, what do they like. Really, I'm doing a sound test and kind of a gauge on what's their English level. And I might do 30 seconds to a minute per kid. It just depends. But I do all that here. So by the time we're at the intro page, I don't need to do that. All right, so this next one, this is a review slide. You'll see this in many classes. Um, so it's basically just flashcards, and it's going over. If you ever see this, especially if you see it on the second slide, this is a review. This is content they've already seen in a previous classes, previous units. So just keep that in mind. You don't have to like explain any of this. This is stuff that they should know. So I typically, what do you see? Might give them some hints, give them a couple seconds. They usually shout out the answers 90% of the time. Okay, yes, it's a police station. Good job. Stars. I mean, not stars. Diamonds. I'm sorry. I work for other companies, so I'm thinking of stars with other companies. Diamonds. I shoot for a minimum of 50 to 60 diamonds a class. With some of the lower levels, like a level one or a lower level two, I try to award participation just as much as I do with correct answers. So those classes, those kids may end up with 80 to 90 diamonds at the end of a class just because I'm giving them out a lot more liberally. The older students, upper levels, I try to make it more causally related to how their performance is in class. If there's any behavioral issues, I might be a little more skimpy with the diamonds. But my general rule is no less than 50 by the end of class. And there's if you look on the Facebook pages, there's a wide array of people's opinions, but check with your trainer if you have questions about it. But I try to make sure the kids are within like a 5 point swing, and whoever is at the bottom, I try to not make them the only one with that score. So I just kind of monitor it and kind of make sure they're close. If someone comes in late, it depends on how late. If they come in 5 minutes late, I can usually kind of catch them up, as we're going along, give them an extra diamond or two here or there. If they come in 15, 20 minutes into the lesson, they're just going to have to accept that they have less diamonds, and it is what it is. So that's all I'll say about diamonds. This next slide is talking this is something you'll see almost every lesson as well, where you're putting the kids on stage and they have to answer a question. So you select them, put them on stage, they hit a card. I don't know if you saw that when I selected them, there's a little hint thing. Especially with some of the level 1 students, they just may not remember. They may not know yet that they have the ability to click a card, so there's little hint buttons for that. So then if they don't hit it, you can also do it as well. I try to let them read. If they are struggling, then of course I'll read it for them or help them through. And then again, um, here's something to note. So this is a 1v4 platform, 4 students to 1 teacher at times. This class, I only had 3 students. So it was very simple. So I just gave them each 2 cards. I gave them each 2 turns with this game. When I have 4 students, the way I do this game is I go through once with everyone. What you'll notice, so I go through once with everyone. Doo-doo-doo. What you'll notice, one thing I want to point out is at the bottom above each student, you can see how many times you selected them. Every time you hit the select button, it keeps a tally, right? So let's click through these cards. Click through the cards. I'm trying to show you something. All right, so once you get to the last card and they're all shown, this tally, if you hit the new round button, if you hit that button, this tally goes away, it resets. So you have to know where you're at. So when I have 4 students, the way I run it is I go through everyone one time. Once you go through everyone one time, then you're going through a second time, right? At this point, you've got 2 students who have 2 turns and 2 students who have 1 turn. You got to keep a mental track. Who are those 2 students? Because then you're going to hit new round so you can get fresh cards again, and all those select buttons have reset. So just keep that in mind. So then I'm like, okay, Sally, I remember she only had 1 turn. Give her a turn. Okay, Jimmy only had 1 turn. Give him a turn, and then I'll exit. If I need the time, then I'll give them all a third turn. But typically I don't. Typically I'll just do 2, and that's fine. So just something I want to point out there. This is a simple game. You click on the student, and okay, and there's a hint button if they're not catching on. If they still are not catching on, you can go ahead and click that start button for them. But it's just a selector to start a game. What are they doing? They are painting. Again, always try and elicit full sentences. So even if they say painting, they are, which is, like I said, that's a common ESL strategy, but just something to remember with qkids. Sometimes it's easy with qkids to forget that stuff because it is just playing games the whole class. But at the end of the day, you want to elicit the same kind of output you would in another platform. So just remember that. This is an AR slide. I hate these slides because we're right smack dab in the camera in their face. So I typically am like, hi, or I'll be silly here just because I'm like, it's awkward for me to be this big in front of you. So this slide, this one was different because it was like every time you click it, the scene changes. Whereas typically you'll click these buttons and like an image will pop up and it'll have a little X button that you can close out. So it just depends on the lesson. They're all a little bit different, but this AR slide is very common. You're teaching here. So this is new content. FYI. So at this point in the class, we're at slide 5. They're learn and it says there learn new words. So these are new words. This is when you pull out. This is when you want to pull out props. Use your easel. Your whiteboard to help add to the content and teach them these new words. What I don't like about this slide is you see these words, but the kids don't. So they don't correlate them with the actual words. So a lot of times I will use the text board and type it out for them too. So as we're learning this new word, they can see the visual and they can see the word that's attached to it at the same time. Okay, so this is always right after the AR slide, you have a review, which is basically flashcards of the new content you've gone over with them. I don't usually spend much time here because I'll usually spend more of the time on the AR slide. Practice vocabulary. This is a game where you see this game a lot too. You see this game where you are verbally saying the word and they have to select the card. So I typically will do 2 per round, and then you can check the results and you can see if they're not answering, there's a hint button. If you check based on their answers, if they got them right, they'll get diamonds, things like that. Sometimes, depending on the lesson, you may not have a really wide variety of results with this game. Teach, work, act. Okay. new round. Work, teach, study. Sometimes you literally will have 3 and it'll just keep rotating rotating the same 3, and it is what it is. Like I said, I shoot for 2 to 3 minutes per slide, but sometimes it's just not gonna work, and that's fine. This is the practice listening slide. What I always do here, I typically will what your job here is to again verbalize and then they select. So I always verbalize before they cannot select a picture until you've selected one. I always verbalize first because what happens is if I go to this slide and I click this, then they have the ability to click and they might click before I've even said anything. So I start with a boy is studying in the classroom. Then I click because they had to listen to me first. They can't have the ability to click. What I will also say is a way that I have found to make this slide last longer is I jump all around. So I'm on slide 4, I'll go to slide 1 to 4 to 2 back to 1 to 3. Like I just switch the order. I don't go 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4. I just switch it around. So from their vision, it's changing up. I'm using literally the same 4 slides, but they don't know that. So that's one way I can extend this slide particular. Pretty much all the classes have an animation story, so I always read the title to them. Again, there's a stage button, but I don't use it here. He is a basketball player. He's playing. So you'll click here to elicit, Kobe or Momo to say whatever they need to say. I always just make sure the kids repeat everything. Same thing through all the slides. Make sure they repeat. And then if I need to, I'll use extension. What do you see in the picture? What does she have? What is she wearing? What color is it? Is she a boy or a girl? You get the idea. Find ways to extend everywhere. This is one of my favorite slides. I always love when I see this in class. So this is you read the sentence and the kids have to make the sentence. So what I do is I read through them all. So he is working in the hospital. I wait for them to select. She is painting on the beach. Wait for them to select. They are studying in the classroom. Wait for them to select. Then I click review. So what I do here is I will unmute them one by one and say, okay, Frank, read number 1. Then I mute Frank. Kelly, read number 2. So that's what I love about this one is I can extend it so easily. I always like this slide. Practice sentences. This is an easy one. The kids can select, and then they have to respond to whatever prompt is there. It automatically puts them on stage. You don't have to do that. It does. The game does it itself. What is this here? She is a painter. She's painting by the lake. So this is one I always try to make sure that even though it's a group setting and a group class, I always try to make sure that there's opportunities where one child can talk. So this would be a good point for that because you've got 4 slides here. So what I do is I'd use this one for Frank. I'd use number 2 for Kelly. I'd use number 3 for Leo. And number 4, everyone. I find ways to you have them respond as a group and as individuals. Give them that one-on-one attention, even though it is a group setting. Okay, role play. This is definitely one you always use the stage for. So you put them both on stage. What I typically will do with something like this, I see, okay, I've got 5 options here. I'll have Frank and Leo for 1, and then for 2, I might switch them. Then for 3, I'll bring in Kelly. Like I just move them all around, make sure they all get at least 1 to 2 turns. And again, that's another way I can stretch the material is flipping that around. Okay, the last slide here. Oh, a lot of these classes have classification something. So where would this person be or where do they work or where should they go? And you click the item, you're like, where does she go on the stage? And it automatically goes where it needs to go. There are also some classes that have classification sorting like this that you have to manually drag, but you'll realize it. Most of them, like especially the ones that have been updated recently, they automatically go where they need to go. And some of the others you have to manually drag them where they need to go, but still pretty simple. Then you've got again the summary slide, which I do not use 99.95% of the time because I find it redundant. The kids have already seen it. It's no new content. So I only use it like in case of emergency. Again, me personally. Then, before you know it, you are at the wrap-up section. So you put them all on stage, give them their stickers. Um, when you've got 4 of them, I do 2 at once, give them their prizes, swap them out for the other 2, give them their prizes. I really shoot to be at this page by 28 minutes. That way I can literally be saying goodbye and exiting at 30. But I can make it work, if you go over 30, if you go to like 31 minutes, it is not the end of the world. It will be fine. Don't worry about it. So, I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, send me a message and I can go over more details. But good luck. Like I said, this is like 2 lessons after the one that you're doing, so it's very similar content. So I wanted to try and get as close to it as possible. Hope that helps.